My wife told me, if you don't like it, then leave. She thought it was a bluff. She didn't realize I was the only reason her world hadn't already collapsed. My name is Marcus. Logistics, systems, boring back-end numbers, that's me. By day, I co-own a consulting firm. By night, I was the unpaid janitor of problems my wife's restaurant refused to acknowledge. If a delivery truck got lost at midnight, I was the one on the phone with the driver. If the payment processor froze on a Saturday rush, I was the guy rewriting code while servers pretended their smiles weren't cracking. The joke was that my wife Jenna owned a restaurant. The truth was, Jenna owned the front-of-house illusions. I owned the messy, invisible arteries that kept the place alive. Friday night. The city smelled of cooling asphalt and fryer grease, an aroma that should be bottled and sold as eau de desperation. I walked into our apartment, expecting at least a flicker of recognition. Instead, Jenna sat at the counter in leggings and the citrine sweatshirt, face glued to her phone, scrolling like Instagram was a job. No smile. No "Hey Marcus," just thumbs moving like bored assassins. I set a bag on the counter, picked up Ty, thought we could eat out on the balcony. Without looking up, she murmured, "I already ate." Gerald and I stopped at the wine bar after checking the staff schedule. "Right," I said, standing there like a delivery guy nobody tips. "Would have been nice to know before I drove across town." She sighed as though I'd asked her to solve world hunger. "You're always so dramatic, Marcus. Not everything is about you." "True," I said. "Though lately, nothing's been about us either. Separate meals, separate weekends, separate conversations. If you can call scheduling staff a conversation." Finally, she raised her eyes, flat, annoyed. "It's a busy season. We're expanding brunch. You knew that." "I knew I've been the one making sure your vendors don't bleed you dry. I knew the only reason those new ovens even arrived on time is because I bullied the distributor. I knew that when Gerald forgets payroll deadlines, it's me rewriting the reminders. But sure, tell me how busy you are." She smirked, a sharp little twist of her mouth. "And you like feeling indispensable. Don't pretend otherwise." "Used to work both ways," I said. "Lately, it feels one-sided." She placed the phone face down with theatrical boredom. "Honestly, you're being clingy. It's boring." I nodded once, the kind of nod men give before walking into a storm. "Okay then, let's be boring for 10 minutes and talk like adults. Do you even want this marriage, Jenna?" Silence. Somewhere outside, a car horn echoed. She folded her arms, leaning against the counter like I was a customer asking for a refund past policy. "I'm serious," I pressed, "because I'm not interested in being your roommate, and I'm definitely not interested in playing stable husband for your friends while we barely acknowledge each other at home." She tilted her head, smirked without warmth. "If you don't like it, Marcus, then leave." That one line hung between us like a neon sign that had finally burned out. I set my keys on the counter. The clink startled her more than my words. "Where are you going?" she asked, half laughing like it was a bluff I'd fold on. "I've got clothes in the car," I said. "Been keeping them there for months." "You're overreacting." I'm reacting," I corrected. "There's a difference." I picked up the bag of Thai, walked to the door, and slid my shoes on. The clink of the keys on the counter still hung in the air like a verdict. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent and someone else's dinner. By the time I reached the car, the city was humming under the streetlights, indifferent to another marriage cracking. I tossed the bag onto the passenger seat, started the engine, and pulled away. People expect fireworks at endings. We had none. Just silence so clean it felt surgical. The engine hummed, steady and impersonal, like it didn't care that my marriage had just flatlined. City lights smeared across the windshield as I pulled onto the boulevard. I didn't bother with the radio. Silence felt cleaner, more honest. 9 years together, and it ended not with a scream or broken glass, but with 5 words. "If you don't like it, leave." Delivered like a receipt, no tip. I drove without aim for a while, letting the streetlights mark time. My apartment in the city had been a half-abandoned crash pad for months, just in case nights at the restaurant ran too long or Gerald's urgent crises swallowed my weekends. Funny how paranoia turns into foresight the second someone tells you to pack your ego and go. When I finally unlocked the apartment door, it felt like stepping into a hotel room rented by someone with no hobbies. 2 plates, 1 mug, an air mattress I never upgraded. Now it wasn't a backup plan, it was headquarters. I dropped the Thai container on the counter, uneaten, and opened a notepad. Not a list of grievances. I'd rehearsed those in my head too many times. This was a list of facts. Conversations with Jenna, 80% staff schedules, 20% complaints about suppliers. Last time we laughed, 2 summers ago, when a delivery guy dropped an entire box of tomatoes and they exploded like grenades in the alley. Gerald, Jenna's father and self-proclaimed co-owner, once called me the invisible backbone of the restaurant. Invisible being the key word. Jenna's friends thought I was a numbers guy who doesn't get the art of hospitality. Right, because paying the electric bill is such a soulless task. I stared at the list until the ink blurred. People think marriages collapse with one big betrayal. More often they erode like a roof leak, quiet, steady, until the ceiling caves in. Saturday morning, I bought a heavier jacket, updated the emergency contact on my insurance, and forwarded a couple work emails. Nothing dramatic, just logistics. When you spend your life managing systems, you know that breakdown isn't about noise. It's about dependencies finally snapping. By Sunday, the realization was sharpened to a blade. For years, I'd been underwriting Jenna's restaurant, not just financially but structurally. The vendor discounts, the deferred payments, the special rates on utilities, that wasn't magic. That was me, bending contracts and calling in favors. I wasn't her husband. I was her free supply chain manager with a wedding band. And now, the system could run without me. Or at least, it would try. Monday morning, my desk at the consulting firm looked deceptively ordinary. Blueprints, invoices, a half-drunk coffee that had cooled into something resembling despair. But beneath the spreadsheets and project schedules, I was replaying 9 years of unpaid labor at Jenna's. See, people thought Citrine survived because of Jenna's charm and Gerald's old-school wisdom. Cute myth. The truth? The place survived because every single artery of that business ran through me. Let me paint the picture. When Jenna and Gerald first dreamed up Citrine, they wanted artisan flatbreads, a wine list with unpronounceable grapes, and an open kitchen that screamed sophistication. What they didn't want was to think about supplier contracts, bulk discounts, or the fact that electricity costs money. That was where I came in. I negotiated meat deliveries that arrived fresher and cheaper than the competitors. I leaned on an old contact in a utility company to secure commercial rates designed for chains, not boutique restaurants bleeding cash. I handled insurance renewals, liquor licenses, the digital point-of-sale system that Gerald swore he'd figure out eventually. Spoiler? He never did. Every little crisis, the oven blowing out in the middle of a Friday rush, the freezer frosting over, the produce supplier threatening late fees, I was the guy fixing it at 2 a.m. while Jenna posted photos of our thriving family business. Here's the kicker. All those deals, discounts, and rate cuts, they weren't magical. They were tied to my name, my company, my contacts, me, and now, Jenna had looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you don't like it, then leave." So I left. And with me went the invisible scaffolding she never saw. I spent that week combing through folders most people would confuse for tax hell. Vendor agreements, energy contracts, supply chain notes, all under my management. I didn't have to torch anything. I didn't need revenge. All I had to do was stop softening the edges. Take the poultry supplier, for instance. For years, I'd brokered a handshake deal, extended payment terms, priority shipments, wholesale discounts that shaved 20% off every chicken breast that touched Citrine's grill. Without me, guess what? Standard terms. Net 15th market rates. They'd still deliver, just no favors. or the utility contract. Gerald used to brag about how our connections kept bills low, like he'd wrestled the electric company into submission by sheer charisma. Reality, I'd pushed the account into a commercial bracket that wasn't meant for a single location restaurant, buying them lower rates in exchange for guarantees I personally underwrote. Remove my name, and the system snaps back to full freight charges. Even the point-of-sale system, my credit card was on file, not Jenna's. Without me, the whole thing would migrate back to retail pricing. So I started making calls. Calm, professional calls. Hi, this is Marcus Hale. I'd like to transfer the Citrine account to standard terms, effective immediately. The reps didn't ask why. To them, it was just a switch on a dashboard, a checkbox in a database. But I knew what those checkboxes meant. Higher rates, upfront deposits, penalties for late payments. The kind of terms Gerald and Jenna thought existed only for other people. Invisible backbone? Fine. Let's see how well the skeleton stands without it. By midweek, confirmation emails rolled in, supplier terms updated, utility tariff adjusted, service provider billing address changed. Each line of bureaucratic language was a quiet guillotine blade. I didn't smile. This wasn't gloating. It was housekeeping. Cleaning my side of the street. Because the truth is, systems don't care about feelings. They care about balance sheets. Jenna had treated me like a replaceable cog, forgetting the entire machine ran through me. And now, the machine was about to learn its own weight. Saturday evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Gerald. Marcus, swing by when you can. We've got an issue with the refrigeration again. Should just be a quick fix. I stared at the text. 9 years of midnight calls, and he still thought I was on call like a maintenance man with no boundaries. I typed back one line. I'm not your technician, Gerald. Please contact your service provider. He called twice after that. I didn't pick up. For the first time in nearly a decade, their problems weren't mine, and the real show was just about to begin. The first signs came on a Monday morning, the way a hangover arrives. Not dramatic, just inconvenient and sticky. Citrine's poultry supplier sent an invoice with a new line item. Payment due upon delivery. No net 30, no handshake promises, no Marcus smoothing it over with a phone call, just full price, upfront. By noon, Jenna texted me. Hey, did you change something with the suppliers? They're saying we need to pay before unloading. This is ridiculous. I stared at the message while sipping coffee in my apartment. The one that actually felt like mine now. Then I set the phone face down. Ridiculous indeed. Imagine that. A supplier asking to be paid like a normal business. By Wednesday, the energy company chimed in. Gerald called me this time, voice thick with annoyance. Marcus, the bill jumped 30%. What the hell happened? We've been on the same plan for years. Correction, I said flatly. I kept you on that plan for years. Now you're on standard commercial rates. There was a silence on the line, broken only by Gerald sputtering. That's robbery. No, Gerald. That's the market. You've just been living on a subsidy called me. He tried chuckling, like it was all a misunderstanding we could clear up with a beer. Come on, son. You know we've got harvest festivals coming up, reservations packed. We can't handle surprises right now. Just fix it. Not my problem, I said. Good luck. Click. By Friday, the facade began to crack. Citrine servers, poor kids working double shifts for tips, were gossiping in the back about smaller portions, unhappy customers, and Jenna snapping at them like a caffeinated drill sergeant. A review landed on Yelp that evening. Used to love Citrine, but suddenly portions shrank and they charged us $8 for what looked like a side of lettuce. Atmosphere is nice, but the nickel and diming is gross. I couldn't have written better poetry myself. Saturday night, the inevitable happened. The walk-in refrigerator shorted out. Normally, I'd be there with a multimeter and duct tape at 1 a.m., saving thousands in spoiled inventory. Instead, I was on my couch, feet up, watching a crime documentary where the murder weapon was a deep fryer. Gerald tried calling, twice, then Jenna, Then a frantic text chain. Jenna, fridge is down. We're losing product. Please just tell me what to do. Gerald, this is childish, Marcus. You're hurting the family. Jenna, Marcus, I know you're mad, but come on. We're drowning here. I typed back one sentence. Nothing more. Please contact your service provider. Cold? Sure, but I'd warned them. Systems don't care about feelings. By the following week, the panic had reached full volume. Suppliers demanded deposits, utility bills stacked with late penalties. Customers noticed the menu prices creeping up like bad inflation jokes. Staff quit mid-shift, sick of excuses and bounced paychecks. And through it all, Jenna still clung to her mantra. We'll get through this. Marcus is just being petty. No, Jenna. This wasn't pettiness. This was reality stripped of the Marcus-shaped safety net. The funniest part? People around town started whispering. I'd hear it walking past the coffee shop near the restaurant. Did you hear Citrine's going under? Yeah, apparently Gerald screwed up the contracts. No, I heard Marcus walked, and now the bills are killing them. It wasn't gossip. It was an autopsy. And me? I slept 8 hours straight for the first time in years. Number 2 a.m. freezer alarms. No Gerald whining about invoices. No Jenna scolding me for making everything about logistics. Funny how peace sounds like a refrigerator not buzzing in the middle of the night. 2 weeks. That's all it took. 2 weeks without me, and Citrine went from buzzy local hotspot to cautionary tale with a side of wilted arugula. The signs were everywhere. Yelp reviews multiplying like cockroaches. Hostess seemed lost. We waited an hour for entrees that came out cold. Place used to feel polished. Now it's like a cafeteria with mood lighting. Bill was double what it used to be. Manager blamed supply chain issues. Translation: they don't know what they're doing anymore. Even the loyalists, the yoga moms who used to brag about their citrine Sundays, bailed after one too many $14 glasses of house wine. The financial fallout came faster than the spoiled produce. Gerald called me one morning, his voice carrying the panic of a man watching his investment bleed out. Marcus, listen, we're behind with payroll. Jenna says she can float it with a credit card, but the staff's already threatening to walk. You've got to help us renegotiate the supplier contracts, just until this storm passes. I sipped my coffee and let him spin his little desperation speech. Then I said, calm as a judge, Gerald, I told you once. I'm not your technician, and I'm not your supply chain manager. I'm done. This is your family, he barked. No, I corrected. This is your family. I'm just the guy you assumed would keep bailing water forever. Click. By Friday night, Jenna herself broke the silence. She showed up at my apartment. Yes, the same Jenna who told me, if you don't like it, then leave. Funny how quickly leave turns into, please come back. She knocked like a neighbor borrowing sugar, not a wife whose empire was collapsing. I opened the door, and there she was. Hair pulled into a careless bun, eyes sharp with sleepless nights, sweatshirt from our college days like it might summon nostalgia. Marcus, she started, her tone rehearsed but shaky. We need to talk. I leaned against the door frame. We? She flinched, just a little. Yes, we. The restaurant's in trouble. Gerald's panicking. Suppliers are demanding deposits. Utilities are choking us. Staff is threatening lawsuits. I know things got rough between us, but if you could just help us stabilize. I laughed. Not a cruel laugh, just the laugh of a man who finally sees the absurdity in Technicolor. Stabilize? Jenna, you don't need a husband. You need a bailout program. Her eyes narrowed. So you're just going to sit back and watch everything burn? I tilted my head. Everything's already burning. I just stopped playing firefighter. She tried the guilt angle next. Marcus, you built this with me. Citrine was our dream. No, I said. Citrine was your dream. My dream was respect. And guess which one went bankrupt first? Her lips tightened, her arms folded, and for a second I thought she'd spit venom. Instead, she whispered, "You're colder than I thought." I shrugged. Turns out, cold is the only climate you notice. By the next week, suppliers had pulled credit lines. Gerald mortgaged his house trying to plug the holes. Jenna scrambled with frantic promotions, half-off brunch. But you can't discount your way out of insolvency. The world thought I was punishing them. They didn't understand. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply gone. And the absence of scaffolding looks a lot like collapse. By the third month, Citrine wasn't a restaurant anymore. It was a waiting room for bankruptcy. The patio that once brimmed with influencers posting flatbreads and cocktails? Empty. Chairs stacked by 7 p.m. The staff that used to brag about tips? Gone. Half quit. The other half stayed long enough to collect the last checks that Gerald could barely cover. Even the neon sign started flickering, like the building itself was embarrassed to advertise. The final collapse came with the bills. Electricity, overdue. Gas, cut off for non-payment. Insurance, canceled for missed premiums. And then the health inspector showed up. Not because of me, not even because of revenge, but because systems don't run on vibes. They run on compliance. Without refrigeration, without cleaning supplies delivered on time, without payroll to pay staff to mop floors, Citrine started to smell less like a bistro and more like a biology experiment. The inspector closed them in 30 minutes flat. That evening, my phone lit up. First Gerald, then Jenna, then both at once, like a duet of desperation. Gerald: Marcus, you've made your point. We need you back. Just this once. Just fix the contracts, fix the utilities, get us breathing room. Jenna: Marcus, please, I know I said things I shouldn't, but we can start over. Reset the account. I'll make it right. We'll make it right. I didn't reply. Not right away. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on my couch, and let the quiet stretch. When I finally answered Jenna, my voice was steady. There's no reset button, Jenna. Respect was the price of admission, and it's long overdue. Silence. Then her voice cracked, not with tears, but with anger trying to disguise itself as vulnerability. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me suffer. No, I said. Enjoyment is a luxury. What you're mistaking for cruelty is just the bill finally arriving. And unlike me, the utility company doesn't accept apologies as payment. Click. Days later, she tried again, this time in person. She knocked on my apartment door on a Sunday afternoon, wearing a sweatshirt from a trip we once took when us still meant something. Hair messy, face pale, eyes carrying the weight of nights filled with panic instead of plans. We could talk, she said. We could fix this. We could be us again. I let her finish. Then I answered the way I'd rehearsed in my head for months. There is no us. There's you, deciding when my labor shows up and how invisible I need to be to make you comfortable. That ended the moment you told me to leave. She blinked, stunned, like I'd turned a light on in a dark room. I miss how safe I felt when you handled things, she whispered. I nodded once. Safe isn't a feeling I create for you to exploit. It's something you build together. And you never wanted to build it. You just wanted to borrow it. Her lips parted like she had another argument ready, but nothing came out. She thanked me for opening the door, turned, and left. No theatrics, no promises, just quiet defeat. That finally felt respectful. By the end of the month, Citrine was closed. Official notices taped to the windows, equipment repossessed, suppliers gossiping about Gerald's bad checks. Jenna, once the queen of entrepreneurial chic, reduced to posting motivational quotes about resilience while her empire rotted in plain sight. And me? I went back to work, slept through the night, and fixed only what I chose, my side of the meter, my life. Dependency and disrespect had finally paid their bill, and for once, it wasn't mine. A month after Citrine closed its doors, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. No surprises, it was divorce paperwork. Jenna had finally decided to make it official. I didn't feel a stab of pain. I didn't throw the papers across the room in rage. I didn't even pour myself a whiskey for dramatics. I just sat at my desk, flipped through the pages, and signed where the sticky notes told me to. Our marriage had ended the same way the restaurant had, not with fire, but with paperwork. Not with a scream, but with silence. Respect isn't negotiable, and once it's gone, you can file for dissolution just like you cancel a subscription you don't use anymore. The lawyers handled the rest. Division of property, signatures, certified copies. Gerald, I heard, tried to guilt me one last time, muttering something about family bonds. Family bonds, like supplier credit lines, snap the moment you stop paying into them. Jenna, of course, tried the softer exit. She sent a single text weeks later. I hope you're well. I typed back, I'm not a bridge, not a safety net, not a door, just a closed chapter. And that was that. Friends kept asking me for a moral. People always want a takeaway, like life is a TED Talk. So here's mine. Dependency and disrespect can coexist for years, until the bill comes due. And when it does, you learn quickly who knows how to pay, and who thought the world ran on favors. Jenna told me once, if you don't like it, then leave. I did. The restaurant collapsed. The marriage dissolved. And me? I slept better than I had in a decade. Final thought? When someone mistakes your effort for gravity, don't argue. Just step aside. If they stumble, it was never gravity, it was you. And now, without me, they finally learned the difference.